Okay, I think we're live now. Hello, thank you for joining in this webinar today. This is part of the Lead Change Officer Development Programme that NUS runs throughout the year, starting with summer training, of course. And this is obviously a webinar about public speaking and preparing to public speak, which
we haven't done for this webinar.
Yes, shut up. Okay. So just some notes on webinar etiquette. Put your microphones on mute where possible. The chat box for asking questions. We will ask a few throughout the course of the session.
Yeah. So I'm John Chambers. I work at NUS along with.
Hi, Rob. I work at NUS as well in the Union Development team.
I work in our political affairs team, which is supporting our national president.
We both have varying amounts of experience in both giving and supporting people with public speaking. I've got this slide in here from Richard, who was going to join us, but he looks like he's just stepped out and unfortunately will not be able to. But what he was going to say is that public speaking was one of the main bits of feedback about what offered to see in terms of support from NUS through the Officer Development Programme or Lead Change. And it's one of his kind of key pieces of work this year to make sure that the Officer Development Programme is working for students' unions and for student officers as well. That himself, if he was here.
This work itself, hopefully you will be able to identify some of the components of giving a successful speech and tips in terms of how you can write those and how you can deliver them, and not just what is around a speech, but also around public speaking and some skills which should help boost confidence and give you some handy tips so that it's not such a stressful affair for everyone in terms of the audience being nervous because you're nervous or you nervous because you've got to give her a speech. So hopefully everyone's a little bit more prepared and a little bit calmer going into any form of public speaking, whether you're an officer or whether you're a staff member.
So thinking about anxiety and nerves, what are people's biggest fears?
Well, what's fear, Rob?
I don't care for beetroot. Not one for me.
Just a complete phobia, or just something you're not keen on?
We're off topic now.
Yeah. My one's spiders. I'm completely terrified of spiders, and it's complete, even if I see one, I can't react. No matter how much I prepare for it, I am completely terrified. And so,
moving on.
Yeah, good plan. Whereas glossophobia is the absolute kind of terrifying, big fear of public speaking and giving speeches. And summarizes it quite well in terms of how people see public speaking, in the fact that the mind is a wonderful thing. It starts working the minute you're born, never stops until you get up to speak in public and you get tongue-tied. You can't think of the words, your mind goes blank, you say the wrong thing, like we're going to consistently do for this half an hour webinar, because we have to talk in front of people. And I think, there are people who obviously do have that as an actual phobia.
Well, phobia is it's an irrational fear, but it's actually very common to be anxious about public speaking. And, we can break that down a little bit more. Hold on, wait, there's another slide in the middle. So again, people's biggest fears, speaking before a group is very common, if not the most as I said, you can break this down a little bit more, and it's actually more about being judged very harshly, having your kind of insecurities exposed.
And I suppose, the perfectionism one is about you always think that whenever you have to deliver a speech, you have to go up to these overhyped kind of examples of public speaking. It's just speaking in front of a group of people and so feeling comfortable and relaxed, like a conversation, rather than having to be perfect and having to have thought through absolutely everything you're going to say and exactly how you're going to deliver it. You can be a lot more relaxed about it, and this kind of strive for perfectionism is kind of, it's overbearing on public speaking, but it's not actually the be-all and end-all, which is why probably people get fear of being rejected or anxiety that people are going to not listen to them, don't really care what they're, when actually you've probably been invited to speak there for a reason. And you might get up, you might not be able to talk properly, and that all adds up to feeling quite humiliated about the whole thing, and you sit there and you go, God, I'm never going to do that again. I never do public speaking. And actually, hopefully, this webinar will give you some of the tools to think about those things in the sense of, okay, this is just a conversation. What should I do to prepare? How can I minimise feeling like this? And actually, hopefully, feel that public speaking is not this big thing to fear, but actually something that we just do every single day and don't really think about.
Okay. We're going to do a quick little exercise now. So in the chat box, if you could out some kind of fizz of what you think makes a good speech. We've got a few coming in already. So there. What else?
Being passionate about.
Oh, here's another one. Clarity of message. Okay, so of course, all of these things do make a good. But the point I wanted to make on the next slide doesn't make sense here. Is a kind of what do our perceptions of a good speech and how do they differ from the reality? And I've kind of posed this question here: how the very smallest fraction of like kind of the best speeches given and the media coverage and the kind of Hollywood portrayal of them affect the way we think about public speaking? And how does that either put or harm our confidence? Because all of public speaking is a lot about confidence. And I suppose what I wanted to talk about for a second is how we aim for something that is realistic and an authentic portrayal of our point of view, rather than going for the big fist pump, the client rally speeches, which are mostly all staged anyway. Quite a lot today, I apologise. So how about we just take a second to appreciate some kind of realistic goals for a good speech, and that helps to kind of calm our nerves, give us some confidence as well. So instead of aiming for this reception of rapt applause, confetti, mass uncontrollable crying, and the style of which is a loud booming voice, lots of fist pumps and bold statements, those frequent call and responses, yes we can, that kind of stuff. Aim for something that is a bit more of just authentic and clear, inclusive kind of performance. Aim for the audience to appreciate your point of view. A normal round of applause, it sounds stupid, but have that as your judgment of success, and you'll immediately be stepping out on the right foot. Look and influence people's thinking rather than aim for the sort of immediate transformational global repercussion.
I think they're things that we would all expect to do in a conversation every day. Like, I'm not sure we'd expect a round of applause after we make a point in a conversation. Like, it's people transfer and add, like you say, different expectations about big speeches and speaking in public, than you would in a conversation. And obviously, whilst it's not a one-on-one conversation, you're talking to a number of people and you are trying to put a point across. The principles are the same as they are in a conversation. So, of course, when you talk to people on a daily basis, you're trying to challenge and influence their thinking, but we wouldn't do so in an inauthentic way. And we often do that by giving reason, talking about ourselves and our experiences and sharing those, and for the normal appreciation of the use, which might be a nod of the head. It might be, that people engage with us and actually talk to us about it, seem engaged. Actually, like you say, there's very rarely a conversation where people get into uncontrollable crying, and that's seen as a kind of section and outcome of public speaking.
The take-home message here is aim for something that's closer to a conversation with the audience rather than a speech. Do you see what I mean?
And it's more likely that you'll get that good reception, and that people will see, as you were saying earlier in the chat box, that confident knowledge of topic, engaging and passion that people get when they talk to you in real life.
Yeah.
It's so-called real life.
So-called real life. As opposed to the Matrix.
Yeah, as opposed to, suddenly... But I suppose that is one of the problems, isn't it? When people think they're giving a speech, they think they're performing or it's something different to what they normally do. And whilst there obviously is a performance element of any stepping on a stage or any light or anything like that, which sometimes, do, and sometimes staff do at conferences and things, but it shouldn't feel different. It should, because we should be at our best when we do keep relatively and see it as a conversation, like you say.
We included some of the stuff in the Lead and Change Office Handbook that a lot of officers were received over the summer. This was a checklist that we had in this about for every communication that you make, how about thinking about these issues and just reflecting back on it? So is your communication or your speech reflecting yourself, your being authentic, your own story and beliefs? Is it making the most out of your genuine existing relationship with the audience, not pretending that there's something there isn't? Is it relevant? Are you the best person to speak? Are you acknowledging and understanding other people's views? Are you being inclusive? Are you making the audience part of what you're saying? Avoiding stereotypes. And that kind of final point is not just are you being clear in your message about what you want to achieve, but kind of for the bigger picture. How is what you're saying fitting into a wider strategy? And I think that that's a solid checklist that's going to give you a foundation for anything you're writing, just to check back against and see whether you're ticking all those boxes. This is the second half of our webinar. That first bit was like, what does a good speech consist of? And then this is some tricks of the trade that you can rely on as things to help you be a good speaker in terms of presentation and delivery and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so this graph obviously lays out quite a clear message in itself. Actually, is an example of something you might want to use in a speech whilst you're giving or doing public speaking. That you have a graphic that can give a point clearer sometimes than we do via words. But obviously, this is saying very clearly that delivery is obviously part of giving a speech and delivering public speaking, but a lot of it is what you do in the preparation and run up to that event, and the notes you have with you, the preparation, the rehearsal you've done, so that you are feeling confident in my kind of Gok-Wan style that somebody said before, feeling confident, looking good, knowledge of your topic, engaging and passionate, and that is really brought home in this graphic, I think.
Thank you for the commentary on the graphic. Okay.
You get the point. It's all about preparation.
Okay, so here's a genuinely useful little tip. So when you're preparing your speech, you've got to be thinking about these three questions, both at the start and as you write. Why me? Why invited you? Why you as an orator? Why time? Is it an event? Is it a time of the year? Is there something that particularly you're expected to say? And then that kind of also relates into why to this audience, room, what's your relationship with them, and might they be expecting to hear from you? And what's your responsibility towards this audience? And those kind of three questions in concert will form your thoughts and prioritize them as well.
Things that you can prepare for, so when you're there, you know what your purpose is, and when you're talking to people either before or after talking to them on stage, that even in a meeting, this might be public speaking in a meeting where you know what you're talking about, you can find out more about these people. You can also ask these questions before you get up there, because one of the things we often do is we prepare something and we don't necessarily react to the circumstances around us. Something might have changed, and actually something you were going to say on the day changes the headline or press changing or something changing in your organisation, that changes the why at this time. Suddenly there is something more important to talk about that you can reference. And I think some of the best speakers do that. They often insert to their speeches which are highly relevant to the time or things that are happening around us. And I think that just adds that extra bit. People are like, oh wow, they really know what they're on about. They're really on it. That only happened earlier and they can already talk about it because you've already considered that before you get up there. And I think that helps you just think, okay, why am I here? Why me? And who are these people?
And the freedom to things and reflect on kind of ongoing affairs will come from being ahead enough in 3 areas. So yeah, exactly. Be clear about why you're there, and then you can be a bit more adventurous. Okay, is bread and butter.
Yep. So it's the kind of checklist of things you want to do before you set out on your adventure of public speaking. So know where you're going. If it's a venue obviously it makes it a lot easier, and you can visualize in your head where you're giving the speech, so you'll automatically feel more comfortable. It will take away some of those initial nerves, but you'll also know kind of where to look, what the familiar surroundings are.
It's about making it your space.
Yeah.
Actually, if you go to the if you have an opportunity, go to the location beforehand, stand on stage, get feel like you're comfortable in that space, and make that you own it.
It'll be something that puts you at ease. You know what it's going to be like when you get up there, and there won't be any unexpected things, or if there are, it's not a whole overbearing group of unexpected things, and actually it's quite like Rob says, it feels a bit like home. So do go and check out where you're speaking. If you don't know, ask a couple of questions, like even if you can't get there beforehand. Ask, what's it going to be like? Is there going to be a podium? Is there going to be something for me to speak from? But do I need to hold notes? Will there be a projector? Do I get all of those sorts of things that just make you feel a little bit more comfortable. How long you've got to speak for? You don't want to have 20 minutes of content you're then trying to nail in 5 minutes because somebody got the time wrong. But you're actually filling the time, and you know how long you've got to speak for. So you're not trying to over research what you're talking about, or put everything that you believe on a particular topic, but instead really drilling down on those questions. What is it I'm really trying to get across? And in that same way, know who you're talking to. So that whilst that who are the audience question is always in the back of your head, you might categorize them as officers or staff or students, but actually what are their interests? Are they all the same, or are they very different? Are they one group of very similar people, kind of like part of your sports club, or are they a big list of people from all across your union that have a wide range of interests, and you've got to try and hit a couple of them so that they feel included in what you're talking about, because it is quite difficult to keep people's time for that sort of thing.
Okay, some basic ones. What time you expect to be there? How long is it going to take you to travel? Again, that's just about being organised and feeling confident in it. And this is an important one. Who else is on before and after me? What are they likely to say? Are you going to cover ground? Are you going to reinforce their message? Want to share a platform with them? That's an important point to make at an early stage as well. And about your responsibilities to both the audience and to the organisers, and to the people you're sharing the platform with.
I think an interesting one as well. You automatically will feel more comfortable as well if you know what the person before you or after you is going to say. And actually, if you know what they're going to say before you, you don't feel like, oh God, whilst you're trying to think and just relax before you go on, you're not constantly thinking, oh God, what are they going to say? They're going to say something that is completely exactly what I'm going to say. I'm going to have to think on the spot, and I'm going to have to change what I'm going to say. But you can actually double team a little bit and make sure that you're complimenting each other. And if you do all that stuff, you will be working towards being at the best of your ability, and being really clear in what you're trying to say. Okay, some other things to remember about your audience that we sometimes forget. We kind of go, well, they're there, this is all about me, and I've got to make sure that I'm prepared and all of those things. But it's important to also think about your audience in the sense that they will be thinking faster than they hear. So no matter what you say to them, they will be thinking about it and they'll be taking it in. And it doesn't matter how quickly you talk, and actually probably the opposite, the quicker you talk, the less likely they are to take in what you're saying. But they will be thinking faster than they hear, so they will be already making assumptions about what you're saying, because they have relatively short attention spans most of the time. So even if you're talking for 5 minutes, you might only have 2 minutes to capture their imagination. So early on, get them thinking about what is yours, being kind of provocative, and if it's that visual on stage which makes people think, what's this about, that they can link with your content and think back to, even if they've got an attention, quite a short attention span. And that will stop them jumping necessarily to conclusions about what you're saying, but you should be aware that they will, and that's why, like Rob said earlier, if you use a stereotype, people to conclusions about what kind of content delivering and what it's about. So try not to kind of allow people to create easy conclusions about what you're saying, all about the content, and sometimes being quite, I suppose, counterintuitive about your content. So if it's a speech about, something that you feel quite comfortable with, and the audience will feel quite comfortable with, they might relax a little bit too much, switch off a little bit, go on their phones, look on Twitter, rather than necessarily listening to what you have to say. So actually, if you're counterintuitive and you challenge them quite early on, they might be, this is interesting, this is different, this is quite what I imagined, and actually be more likely to kind of think a little bit less, and basically go with you and follow your train of thought a little bit more, because our audience are easily distracted. But so are you as a speaker, and I think it's worth saying that, if you are talking, something happens in the room, somebody spills some water, smashes a glass, don't be afraid to pause, let the room deal with that situation, and then move on, because actually just powering through will mean that your audience miss out, and you don't get anything out of it. So always feel that you can stop, pause, let the audience catch up, and make sure they can get their attention span back, and that they're not distracted by anything that's happening, and you're not, and that you're really focused as well.
Writing a speech. Something that I have found very useful is to imagine in speech being a monologue that you stream of consciousness, to see a series of questions in response to audience who is asking questions of you. And what you need to do beforehand is imagine what questions people will be asking you. And actually, if you go back to the triangle, why me, why to this audience, why at this time, you'll have a pretty good set immediately of questions that come to mind that you will need to answer on stage. So write them down, put questions in an order that makes sense, and to answer those questions, it will keep you succinct, it will keep you on message, and it also allows you a bit of freedom later on when it comes to delivering a speech. You can answer the question, but in the process of an answer, you can also tell a little anecdote or go a little bit off and talk about something else, but then come back to the question immediately afterwards. So here somewhere. So next slide. Okay, so that's run writing speech. Here we go. So on stage, what you have in front of you is cue cards with the questions. So you have the base speech, or that might help you to write down a sort of word speech to start with, if in your own preparation time. But on stage, what you have with you is cue cards that have the questions that you have to answer, and maybe point of your memory as well. And that means you can go from your first point to your second point directly, just saying one or two things that the things you want to say, or you can take a slightly more roundabout route. You're walking down the road, you're going to the shops, but you take a little detour and you go and see a friend and you pop into the shops, but then you're back at your next point, and that's a comforting way to give a speech, because you always know where you are, where you're going, and what point you're trying to get across to the audience. It comes down to recreate within the room conversation.
I think that's the thing, our conversations, right? Everyone will have conversations like the second graphic, very to the point, succinct.
Yeah. This
is what I want to get out of you. But in a normal conversation where we actually engage people, the is obviously more of a recollection of what we do on a daily basis with people to get on with, people people that we're trying to bring with us, because we use a number of different anecdotes, like you said, a number of different personal stories to move people to come with us. And if they don't seem like they're reacting, we often jump to another point or try and move on to talk about something else. And in that process, we bring more and more people with us. We engage people. Somebody might join the group, and then you expand it, or something happens. And like we were saying earlier, you can still get back to that central point. And I think that's part of this, as Rob was saying, in terms of being part of a conversation and bringing the audience with you, rather than them being just spoken at for a period of time. And I think that's what these last 2 points are about as well, which is you need to make your audience feel like they are having that conversation with you, because they won't doze off, fall asleep, like we've all done in boring presentations from time to time. But actually, they're coming with you on this journey. You're looking at them, and these cards, rather than having to read, look down constantly at words and get tongue-tied over different sentences that you've formed, really long sentences that you've written, actually you're putting your thoughts back into your own words, style way, and that means that you'll be able to look up at your audience, engage with them like you would in a conversation, because actually, if you're in a conversation with somebody where you're constantly looking down or like away, people find that a bit sometimes, and actually people like eye contact, they like having positive body language where you're looking at them, you've got freedom with your arms to kind of express what you're saying.
You're making it harder for yourself as well, because in day-to-day life, you don't try and memorize a series of exact words in an exact way, do you? You just have a thought and try and express it in the best way.
It's a to-do list, and you remind yourself what conversations you need to have, and I think that it projects that engaging, confident thing that you were talking about earlier, in terms of you look positive, but also people feel like they're actually having a conversation with you, and you can look around the room, and people can feel that they've got almost a one-on-one connection with you, even though there may be 20, 30, or even 200 people in the room, but they feel like they're part of that conversation, and it helps you look like you're confident about what you're talking about, because they are own words.
So that's where the perception of confidence comes from, that we were saying earlier, what makes a good speech.
Yeah.
It's not so far as that you're confident, it's you've reframed the idea of giving a speech in your head to being about conversation with people and genuinely trying to engage them, and as opposed to standing there and constructing this mirror in front of yourself of, I am pretending to be a positive speaker.
It's a lot more natural, and I think people will see that and they'll go, and even if you stop and, like you would in a conversation, we always have those moments where we go, oh God, my mind's gone back, totally forgot my voice. Just look down at your card, just say like, oh okay, I get this now. We can go back to the point, and people will go, fair enough. Yeah.
Tips and tricks here.
So a lot of these are things we've already talked about, but if you feel like you're losing your place, don't worry about it, and that's the thing. Like, if you feel more nervous about something, you'll get more nervous as well. If you think like, oh my God, I'm losing my place, I don't know where I'm going, I'm getting tongue twisted, maybe I'm being too monotone, these people don't look like they're responding to me. Don't worry about it, don't panic. Just slow down, breathe, because nobody in the audience is like, oh God, the more that you kind of worry about it, the more they'll kind of like, oh God, this is kind of falling apart. So you can be relaxed. You've got your cue cards in front of you, so you can know where you're going. You can just stop for a second, make a joke about it. The audience be like, oh, it's Friday.
Some of the best speakers I know are more than happy if they've just lost their track a bit to stop and make the audience stop with them for about 20 seconds while they just have a think about what they're going to say, launching back into it again, because much more confident and much more articulate, because they've regained where they were.
And it's that thing that you were saying earlier with that triangle. If you've got all those things right, you are the person that they want to hear from. It is the right time for you to talk to them, and they're the right audience. Well, they're waiting for you, so it's okay. Like, it's okay to give them 2 seconds to pause. They're there for you. They're waiting to hear what you've got to say. And they'll work with you. They're not going to walk out unless they think those questions are wrong. So really drill into those questions. Get your cue cards. You'll be fine. A good trick is have a joke up your sleeve that you can kind of use at a point, or pick somebody in the audience who's on their phone and be like, oh, this must be terrible. Maybe I should get back to the point, and use that as an excuse to kind of like look back at your cards and move on, and have a glass of water close by, so you can take that break, because nobody like, oh my God,
what a horrible human being.
Exactly. So have that drink of water, and give the coffee a miss, because you'll be on edge if you're drinking too much sugar or having too much caffeine, and actually instead get off the caffeine, just have a nice chilled day in the run up to it, and you won't be so panicky when you get up stage, because you know where you are, you know who you're talking to, and you've got your cue cards to mind you, and you've got a few tips like having some water or joke to make fun of the audience to get you there.
Okay. Now, what we do at the end is do some stuff. So you've got to the stage where you've got your understanding of what a good speech is. You've got something that you're happy that it clarifies your message and it's an authentic representation of you and all that stuff. And you've got a few tips and tricks for how to deliver it on stage. This next bit is like how to make it so that I can make my point and it sticks, because it's using devices that have been proven over time, over thousands of years, to be cleaner. So I've got 4 of my sort of favourites here, and I'm sure John will take some of his as well. A couple. This one is about repetition, the repetition of a word and phrase at the beginning of successive clauses, and they call that in the ancient world anaphora. It's very prevalent. I've just got a clear example here of the I have a dream speech, the Martin Luther King one. He starts every sentence with I have a dream that one day our children will judge by the creed of their character, and then the next line starts I have a dream, and then it ends I have a dream. That's a nice rhetorical device there. Another one that I quite like, the second one here, is about bringing up a subject by doing it or denying that it should be brought up. So a really recent example, Donald Trump trying to smear his opponent said, I promised I would not say that ram Hewlett-Packard into the ground. It's used all over the place. It's quite a cheeky rhetorical device.
I actually looked back at Megan Dunn's speech at a conference, and there was one where he was going, I could talk about students having to live on beans and in poverty, and I could talk about all the things that this government are doing in attacking students and taking away and piling them with debt. I could talk about those things, but I don't need to, and I won't. But obviously by she just mentioned all those things, and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, we don't need to take time saying this stuff, but you'll say it anyway, and it makes it sound like you're not being petty, you're not kind of like going over things that people already know, but you are pointing them out and reminding them. I think there was one that Barack Obama did in 2004, where it's like, I don't need to mention this country's amazing, skyscrapers and the wealth that we have from money and all these kind of things. But by doing so, and the greatness of our architecture, or whatever, by doing so, everyone had in their head that vision and that vision kind of graphic. Yeah, you're building memory, frame in people's minds. I can think of all those things. I can visualize them, and that's powerful because then you can use them about what you're actually attacking or what you're critiquing.
A couple more that I like. Chiasmus is about using 2 or more clauses that are kind of back to front from each other to make bigger points. So aiming for this ABBA structure. So the way to explain this is to use a few examples. So Boris Johnson here at Tory Party conference describing the Labour Party, think of this what you will, said trots militants with vested interests and indeed interesting vests, that kind of ABBA structure, putting together there to make a larger point. And to bring it back into the context of the student movement, here is Richard Brooks at SU's 15, said in his speech, I have every faith that a student movement aiming to sharing an aim can overcome anything, which, it adds a bit of poetry, it lasts in people's minds. It's
also people go, that's clever.
Yeah.
We did that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what you want. You want the, yeah. And big American politics, that's where people would be like, woo, yeah, America. And then, this last one here is a pleonasm, and this is actually way more common than you think it is in rhetoric, but a bit less common in the written language. But this is about using more than is necessary to make a clear point, because you're reinforcing a point, you're hammering it home. So, one that you'll often hear is this kind of, we must cooperate together as one movement to reach our shared goal. Like, all of these things kind of imply the same thing, like, collaborative working, but they build a kind of more powerful expression. It's common in conversation, not necessarily common and rhetoric, not necessarily so common in written writing, because it's seen as frills on unnecessary frills. Have you got any of your own?
Becoming more of a podcast than a web. I think it builds on the last one. I think something that people often do, particularly where you've got an audience that is quite broad and not necessarily quite targeted, in that if they are niche and targeted, you can speak directly to them a lot more and use examples that they'll be familiar with. And if you're talking quite broadly to everyone in your students' union or your whole staff team, they will all have very different roles and different kind of expectations about the work and what it means, and in their head an idea of what the union is. And actually, I see quite a lot of big politicians doing and big company chief execs and things like that, where they will use lists of things to power through, so that everyone feels like they've been brought in a little bit. So you can, quite quickly talk about, the amazing things that sports teams do and the fantastic things that our societies do. I don't even need to go into the, fantastic work that course reps do in changing the way, and you can list,
up, downs, and lefts and rights, and
And I think, big long lists of things. I think, there was a massive example in the early 2000s with Al Gore and the US presidential election there, where he used to kind of go, tax has gone up and tax has gone down, and unemployment's gone up, or those kind of things.
All of that kind of opposite.
Yeah, where you give opposites playing against each other. Lots of lists that go on and on and on and on, and the more they go on, the more it reinforces your point. So it's kind of combining a number of these different kind of old Latin devices. Gordon Brown used to do it a lot. Lots of big kind of long lists of achievements that get people worked up, and they feel really good about themselves because at least one of them will be directly related to something they hold close to them, or something that's really important to them, or is specifically them or their work. And that can help buy them in and feel like you're not leaving anyone out. And actually, that's very important sometimes, particularly at some of the speeches that student union presidents will deliver at kind of volunteering awards or academic awards, learning and teaching awards, where people want to feel like they're brought in, despite the fact that they come from a huge range of different subjects or parts of work or union. So it's quite a good one for keeping board if you need to, or if your audience is more bored.
But so I think we should do a caveat on this kind of jab at the end sort of thing. This is nice to have. This is the
going for it.
It's the sort of oregano on top of your sort of pasta bake. Do you know what I mean? It's the added extra.
The oregano.
Yeah, hold on. How do you say it?
Oregano.
No.
Tomatoes. Anyway. Yeah, and I think that's the point.
But so focus first on knowing what you want to say, having confidence that you can give an authentic portrayal of yourself rather than shooting for the moon, and use some of the tips about answering questions from the audience and taking a break and all the stuff that we've gone through. And then at the end, if you feel so, then you can start to do some of this.
And if you feel comfortable, you can shoot for the moon. We've been to the moon, so it's all cool. You can deliver it, you can pull it off. But yeah, there are things, and there are things as well we do use in everyday speech. We do some of those things, and we do use kind of rhetorical devices quite often because we pick them up and we share them amongst ourselves. So I think some of it is, like you say, some of it you'll do anyway, even if you're not writing a proper laid out speech. But you can use those devices, and they do work, and they have worked for thousands of years.
Remember, you're there to motivate, influence, persuade, inform, translate, entertain. They can be speeches and public speaking can be a powerful tool for that.
That's your goal in your daily life.
Exactly.
That's you definitely want to get out in the morning to
you've got that
motivate, influence, persuade, inform, translate, and entertain people.
But you have to have a conversation, you can change people's thoughts, or at least challenge them.
Important one, isn't it, as well, because so much of what we do is to motivate people to act on things that we want them to do, or things that our organisations want them to do, or just from moral value. We want people to come on a journey with this. And I think give yourself the freedom, you feel more confident, and use your own words and your own stories and your own experiences are so much more powerful than just reading out things that other people have written for you or briefed for you or written down. And I think those things are important because they do make you look like that confident person who understands what they're talking about. That is more likely to change somebody's emotions or their opinion, because they go, oh wow, that was really captivating, because they seem so natural and they are really authoritative on this topic, because they're just talking from the heart. And you always know that when you watch big politician speeches, you only really connect with the ones who you do feel about something that they genuinely believe in. And that's what we're all here to do, particularly in the student movement, is just to, like Rob says, either challenge or change people's views. And we can only do that if people feel like we're doing it for the right reasons, because we believe in it, and because you're being natural about it. So, yeah, it may be people's absolutely greatest fear. Inductually, it's quite easy. It is actually just a conversation. It's all the things that we would normally do. Going into a room, making sure we feel absolutely confident, and making ourselves feel more comfortable in doing that. And, I think if you do that, you will impress, because actually it's greatest fear. And, people have this is impressive. If you go up there and you feel natural and you look good, and you're talking with real emotion about the things that have happened, experiences that have happened to you, people are really impressed by that, and should be, because it's, of course it's not an easy thing to do, but I think it's, it's something that people will be impressed.
Thank you very much for your time, everyone, today. If you've got any questions, drop us an email there.
Don't forget to fill out the evaluation form as well.
And we'll send you the evaluation form as well. Okay. Thank you. Cheers.